Ready. All set?
We ready, Ed?
Yes.
Welcome everyone here this morning. We've done that through the finance committee, so I'll move right to the roll call. And I don't think anybody left, but do it the correct way. I'm here. Nigro,
Yes.
Walsh.
Here.
Reganelli.
Here.
Paulino.
Here.
Higgins.
Here.
Melendez.
Here.
Okay. Full board. The next item is the approval of the December 5th, 2024 meeting minutes. And I have a resolution to introduce that approval.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
The minutes are for review and are in front of you. Are there any questions, concerns about the minutes? Comments? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve. Oh, we have that. We have that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, approved. Alejandra, finance committee report.
Finance committee reports that certified resolution 12/2024 was approved by the finance committee for consideration report.
Great, and just to briefly review, I know all of you were just at the finance committee, but this resolution from the board perspective is the actual appointment and the engagement of Piper Sandler as the underwriter. They would be the awardee pursuant to the request for services for underwriting services. This resolution both appoints it and just prior to the appointment makes the required secret determination. If you remember, as part of the Pine Hills land acquisition, we made a secret determination. It was an unlisted action with no significant impact to the environment. So this follows, this is part of that process. This follows that secret determination. So that's the resolution, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alejandra, I assume you're introducing the
I am
motion.
introducing the motion.
Second,
I'll second.
Sarah. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, pass. The next item is a CEO report, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody, and happy holidays. And I apologize for dragging you down here on December 23rd, the day before Ally's birthday. She's one of those poor kids that got the joint birthday, Christmas present all in one.
47 years.
We just have to ask.
Thank you. So last week was a somewhat of an eventful week. As you all know, we had the college had their results of the auction presented to the bankruptcy court, and I will turn it over to our bankruptcy attorney, Peter Pastore, to kind of just walk through how that all went, which you all know the outcome as was in the papers, but Peter, you want to just
Well,
tell
yeah,
exactly what was done and why it was done?
Just to summarize, when we were last here, you authorized Mr. Mazza, and Mr. Nigro, and Mr. O'Connor to submit a qualified bid for $35 million, which we did. And we submitted that to the bankruptcy court, and that gave us our ticket to the auction sale. We showed up at the auction sale. Mr. Mazza was there, Mr. Nigro, Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Riley, and it was an interesting day, and not to get into too much detail, but you might as well hear it. There were good, 30, 40 people in this big room, and what they started out with is individual bids on individual properties, first with regard to the residential properties which secured the DIP lender, and those totaled about, 9 or 10 million, I'm not exactly sure. And then they switched over to the bondholder collateral, and that yielded about $4.5 million. And that wasn't the end of the day. And then what the debtors representative said, we want everybody to consider one last bulk bid, and we, of course, were at $35 million. And under the direction of Mr. Nigro, Mr. Mazza, and Mr. O'Connor, we stayed firm at the 35, and we submitted that $35 million bid. At the next juncture, the bondholders and the DIP lender could exercise their credit bid rights. So at that point, we didn't know if they were going to take the property back and leave us behind, which would then have meant that they would have not received our $35 million. And they were forced with this kind of Hobbesian choice of, do we take $14 million or do we take 35? And, you know, thanks to the leadership of your committee or your board and your leaders, we stayed firm, and it was the right decision. They came back, but there was one little caveat, which you probably have heard by now. There was the president's house, which was 625, I believe, Kevin. And we had asked this question previously: how are the unsecured creditors going to be dealt with in this deal? Because right now it's just the mortgage lenders, and Judge Littlefield is going to want to know how you're going to take care of them. And then just coincidentally, they came back to us and said, would you accept the president's house, which we would dedicate to the unsecured creditors? And we were, you know, we had our game faces on, and I said, well, I'll have to confer. And we, of course, conferred, and Dominic was smiling and said, let's go. And we put thumbs up, and we took the bid. Then there was a deadline for filing objections to the bid, because we still had to get it approved by Judge Littlefield. There were no objections filed. And then last Thursday, we met in front of Judge Littlefield, and Mr. Jameson was there, Mr. Nigro, and all of the representatives of the authority. And Judge Littlefield went through the entire docket, and he awarded our bid, the successful bidder. And he was very complimentary of the process and the authority and the people involved. So the next thing that will happen is we'll go to a closing, obviously after Joe Scott does his good work. But there is one other thing in the bankruptcy. They did put on the record that there's going to be a reorganization/liquidation plan. And the main thrust of that will be the sale to the authority. But then in that reorganization plan or liquidation plan, they'll deal with the distribution of the assets, and mostly there'll be a concern about the unsecured creditors. The debtor's attorney has put in some very nice legal bills, and those will be dealt with. And the DIP lender reserved on the record that they must be paid in full, but they've got that worked out with the bondholders, and everybody seems to be on board. And we got a sale order, and now the purchase and sale agreement is being worked out with the authority, and I believe we're all set with that. We did, after the hearing, met with the debtors' representatives and us at 80 State, and we got a very cooperative meeting, and basically we went over a lot of the detail involving what contracts we would want to assume and what contracts we don't want. And they also have a voluminous amount of documents at College of St. Rose. There were 3 or 4 of their employees there. They were very cooperative, and they expressed their desire to work very cooperatively with the authority. They're very happy that the authority is going forward. So that's kind of the sum of where we are. And then it's just left to you guys to put together the repurposing of all the properties and a successful conclusion.
We'll have that done by now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Peter or myself? You know, I should add that Judge Littlefield really was very complimentary of the process and the auction, and County Executive McCoy was in the court with us, sitting right up in front, and the judge was very complimentary to how this whole process went. He said, this is exactly the way this is supposed to work. So I think we had great representation from Mr. Pastore, and none of this wouldn't have happened had it not been for your deliberations. And you know, I just not for nothing. You know, I've done a lot of board work in my life. You know, government boards, nonprofit boards, private sector boards, and I think this board functioned exactly like a board is supposed to function. You know, you were diligent in your approach. you disagreed on things, yet without being disagreeable. And you asked the right questions, and obviously we came to the right conclusions. And that's why I think we were successful in getting that bid. So, and all of this was, with the great support of our county executive along the way. And, I thought this worked out very well. If we can just keep this going through the rest of it, because the hard part's coming. John?
Just one thing, that the judge conversely said that a bankruptcy of this size, 35 million, doesn't get settled in 2 months. Very, very unusual.
Right.
Kevin, one other thing. I just also want to thank Harold for all of his backdoor diplomacy. Harold was in and out during that day, and he was behind the scenes, and he did a yeoman's job keeping us informed about the way things were going. Thank you very much, Harold.
Thank you.
I echo those remarks on behalf of the board. You really hung in there well for us. And I appreciate your commitment to a lot of stuff that was flying around.
And he even managed to keep his surprise of us getting awarded the bid to a minimum.
Anyway, it was a great effort, everybody, and of course, tremendous leadership from the board and Kevin and Dave and the county team. And I will say, looking back, I was in the room along with Kevin when the idea for the authority came up, and in fairness, the credit for that does go to the county executive. It was his idea, and to go from that moment in time to where you sit today is quite an achievement.
I think you're being called to another case.
Any other
Coffee's
questions
done.
or comments on the process of bankruptcy? Dave, Jeff, anything you'd like to add? Okay, so we've got some other business here. We have a resource on our board that I thought might be good for you all to hear from. She's actually the only person who does this for a living, aside from our private sector real estate developer, Mr. Nigro. But Allison, Allison Walsh works for the ESD, but she works on the institutional real estate side and has the job of redeveloping or repurposing, former state institutions, which I can't imagine what goes into doing that. But Allison has offered, and I took her up on to just kind of walk through a little bit, talk to us a little bit about the process that she goes through and how that works, and who some of the players are. So I turn it over to you, Allison.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Just as Kevin said, just my day job is I oversee a portfolio of state-owned property, often prisons or old psychiatric centers, primarily upstate. And they are surplused by their various owner agencies, and our agency is the ones that kind of do the deals of redevelopment. So we do this a number of ways, sometimes transferring sites directly to a county or an IDA, or issuing an RFP seeking a developer. In some cases, when there's not an obvious reuse or interested buyer, we'll issue an RFP for a feasibility or planning study to kind of figure out what our options are there. And there's a few reasons and a few types of these studies. If a site's in really rough shape, we might do a full conditions report to understand what needs to be done and to shore up the building, or what the cost of demolition might be. Luckily, I don't think we're in that scenario here. We have buildings in pretty good shape. In other cases, we may issue an RFP for a feasibility study in order to evaluate different reuse and redevelopment options for a site. In these cases, we develop a scope of work seeking consultants who will, in collaboration with elected officials and stakeholders, develop a list of possible land uses and development scenarios that could occur on the site in order to make redevelopment feasible. And we prioritize plans that provide the highest invest return to the towns, villages, cities, or counties that are impacted by the site. In a lot of these situations, not unlike St. Rose, the closure also had a huge economic impact in terms of job loss. So you are seeing closed prisons and psychiatric centers where there were huge job creating engines in their community. So you have to kind of factor in that as well. Therefore, community and stakeholder engagement is kind of the cornerstone upon which we build most of our redevelopment plans, and without their support, the entitlement process can be stalled or completely blocked. We need their buy-in, but of course, we also want it as well, as the goal of redeveloping a closed, unused site is to bring economic activity back to the impacted community. The structure of community engagement can range widely depending on what we're trying to do at a site. Sometimes we will engage a consultant to kind of conduct a handful of meetings with relevant electeds and stakeholders, or a much more structured engagement process, in which case we'll do online and in-person surveys, charrettes, have an ongoing advisory committee kind of guiding the process. And importantly, a strategy that makes sure that the right groups are being targeted and their voices are heard. A community engagement strategy is useless if you don't have the right people at the table, obviously. And something that I found to personally be true is that a communications and engagement strategy has to extend far beyond the length of a consultant contract. So as long as we, the board, are involved in kind of being the stewards of this property, there needs to be some kind of, long-term engagement strategy. And like I said, I typically work with sites that have been closed for years and deteriorating without any obvious reuse in a lot of cases. So the strategies that I implement on a regular basis might look a little bit different than what we were wanting to do here, but I think kind of the engagement process, the RFP process to get us to that point will have a lot of overlap. And I think we're in a good position right now because there's a lot of work that has been done on this site, market studies and feasibility studies, and we have, I'd like to think, a lot of assets remaining on the campus from maintenance personnel and things like that that we can lean on into to understand the structures that we're working with. But of course, as a resident of the neighborhood myself, I have to just say we can't underestimate the importance of the voices of the community. That's pretty much it, unless you have any specific questions.
Anybody have any thoughts?
I'd just like to add a personal note about Allison. This will tell you how old I am, but I knew her mother when she was 14 years old. And the daughter of Ruth and Jim Malloy, J.H. Malloy, contractors in the area. It's your grandparents. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
Jim was the head of St. Anne Institute when I was there. It was a lot of fun.
He's a great guy.
So
I owe my my need to participate in the public realm, I think, to my grandfather. He's a very charitable person.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
One of the, we do have this, even going to the auction, there were interested parties, I'm not gonna name them. And we've had other people talking to Kevin and everybody. With that in mind, that list of potential opportunities, call them that. One of the process you mentioned was sort of expedited. That you already kind of have a group of interested parties, and then you bring, and then, okay, let's start those discussions.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't really do anything until we own the property, and that could be 2 or 3 months out. But because, I think from my perspective, the people that know I'm on this board, they want to see things happen.
Absolutely.
And there's already been talk about this one or that one, the other one, obviously. And that we can develop a process that has motion to it and moves along. And it does all the community engagement things we want to do, but at the same time, we're not sitting around for a lengthy period of time waiting for a report.
I agree.
And that's sort of my personal hope
No, I
for
think
the approach on this.
I think that's right, and I think, I think we're in a unique situation where we are very aware of the interests that exist in many of these buildings, and I think it would be a detriment to the redevelopment if we waited on any of that. I think keeping the site active and warm and having bodies and businesses on it is the right move, but under, our role should still be to make sure that the community is involved and engaged, and however we want to structure that to be a decision.
And one thing I don't want to do is create false expectations, oftentimes, I personally, sometimes planning firms is so I can get out, and all of a sudden they're presenting this big plan, and then there's all these expectations that it's really gonna work. I really think we've got some very interested people, and let's develop a plan where we can start plugging them in quickly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman.
You know, one thing that I think you may want to consider as you move forward is, you know, following up on what Ali said, is even perhaps some temporary uses on the campus. The county executive mentioned to me that there might be some things that the county could do, you know, along the way, but just to get, you know, we all know the benefit of having bodies and activity back on that campus. It's probably the best security measure that you could have. So, you know, you may want to consider doing some temporary things to get people back in there right away while you still go ahead with a process like the one Ali sketched out. I know, Sarah, you've done this, particularly for Liberty Park and some others in the city. Any thoughts or comments?
I totally agree with Ally, and the idea of getting activity in the property now, not just from a security standpoint, but from a building systems, keeping them live and operational, being able to keep, you know, close ties with any of the maintenance professionals or service providers that know that property well is really key. And, you know, I think Ally's point of being in a unique situation is something that we really are fortunate for. You know, this is a scenario where the market testing that has been done over the past 12 months after the announcement of the college's closure, having a professional team working with the college, with the bondholders to market the property, really field interest is not a luxury that you would typically have with a large holding like this. So knowing the wide net that has already been cast, being able to read the studies that the college has already prepared, be able to see them previously, puts us in a pretty remarkable position from a redevelopment standpoint. So completely concur.
Yeah, Dylan and I have been keeping a kind of a running tab of all people who've expressed interest, and you know, we're up, what, 22 individual parties, give or take?
Yeah, including developers and everybody else, sure.
So, you know, who knows what will come of that, but we've been keeping a list, so as if and when we do this process, we can, you know, turn that over and maybe act on some of those things.
How would we, in terms of these short-term occupancies, how would we handle that legally? If these were not permanent sales?
Well, I think there's two parts, right? So right now, and I don't know where you guys are in the process, this is a town hall question, not mine. But I will tell you this, like, we need to have a license agreement with the College of St. Rose as soon as possible, right? They're gone, meaning they're literally like closing up shop for 2 weeks because they're happy as heck of what just happened. So they're coming back and it's the first day back, we're gonna meet with them, right? We're gonna meet with them. They have been, as Peter said, very gracious and accommodating and provide all the documents and information to the Alliance, to this board and to the county. And I think it's getting in there, right, so that we understand what the facilities are there. But the license agreement, but I think in the meantime, when we have that license agreement, it's actually meeting with people so that when we're closed, that on day one, we can have other agreements in place. And Kevin's been meeting with a lot of interested parties ahead of time. We've had conversation with some interested parties. So, you know, I don't think that it may be all transfer. It could be, you know, lease agreements month to month, and then figure those pieces out. But it gets the property in use, right? It gets bodies in the buildings, and I think that is important because once things start to happen, all of a sudden interest starts to rise.
So pre-closing, we do have those rights. In our purchase and sale agreement, we have the right to go onto the property and conduct diligence activities.
You don't anticipate any pushback?
No, you know, quite, they've offered us, Jeff, Peter and I met with the college attorneys, they offered us access to keys. They've given us, told us where all the operating manual is going to be, both physical as well as electronic. So, you know, they're really being very open about this, and I don't see that would be a problem with any of these. As a matter of fact, we have a a request from one of our board members to have an event at the college, and maybe Danielle, maybe I'll turn it over to you at this point just to kind of talk with
Just to finish before we move on. Is it possible that we have a meeting scheduled for, I believe, the 9th of January?
Correct.
Is it possible to have, would it be possible to have some sort of, the expedited approach, have sort of in writing so we could move forward with hiring of whoever we may hire to do this quick planning process?
We have the scope, like,
The scope,
Yeah.
you know, and talk that, so we're moving.
Sure.
I just, if we
I
could,
don't know if that's realistic, that close.
Yeah,
well,
So we're not-
you
well, I
know,
mean, we could sketch one out and then.
procurement wise, Tom, is that, what would this be? Would this be considered professional services?
It could be, it certainly could be.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly if there's some kind of planning license.
Ally, what's
associated
the kind
or
of
something like that.
general range of cost for these types of engagements?
It definitely runs the gamut. I usually operate in a sphere of around $250,000, and that I would say the community engagement piece is what inflates numbers. So that would be like a feasibility study that's taking into consideration like land use, zoning, conditions of the building, and the community engagement structure. I know the more meetings you have, the more in-person, charrettes, those kinds of things will create inflated costs because of staff time and things like that. So it's really going to be dependent on how we structure that scope and how long we want a process to, how long we want to consultants based on that process.
as Sarah said, there's a lot of assets that have
Yeah, I
already
think-
been produced.
I think getting an
Yeah.
understanding of that too will help us
So
a lot, like if we could see any.
I just want, and maybe this is more to Kevin and Dawn, that we're moving.
Sure.
We're moving, we're not waiting months for an
Moving is still
RFP
consideration,
and language and things like that.
I think that moving is still consideration. And I know personally, I don't do real estate, and I think, as this is going to be whatever it's gonna be in terms of once we start writing this training. And I'd rather be fully informed, and fully engaged, on who would ever be hired to do any of these things. Because, this is a very unique situation, that hasn't really been done before, I think. And I just would, I think I understand about moving quickly, but I think there's a lot to process still before we start considering a professional contract for $250,000 perhaps on engagement that, to be honest, we don't even know what we're engaging at this time. So I'm just a little.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of chicken and egg too, because we know that there's things that we want to see happen on the campus quickly. We know there's interested parties, but we also need the community to know what that is and be part of that conversation, for a lot of reasons. So figuring out how and when we want to structure that engagement, I think having Danielle on the board is a big step in that direction. I mean, she can speak for a large group of them, but making sure we're not taking for granted the fact that we are very much doing things, right in the neighborhood and people, a very engaged neighborhood.
I just want to make sure you're moving.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting from one meeting to the next without action taking place every 24.
Well, I mean, regardless of whether we want to issue it right away, I think I could work with Dylan or someone to work out a scope and what it might look like,
Absolutely.
and,
I would,
we can make
that's
a
a starting
decision
point,
as-
and I just want to make sure that we're moving.
Kevin,
I mean, how fast, that'll be decided as we move.
Kevin, I mentioned this to you after the bankruptcy, that it was recommended to me very highly by a couple of senior trustees that we talk to this woman who's been in charge of facilities for many, many years. She knows every square inch of every property. We should bring her aboard in some way, at least interview her at first, and maybe she could become part of our advisory group. I forget her name, but
Yeah,
Highly
she was at that meeting, John, that Peter, Jeff, and I met with, when we met with the college and their attorneys. And Peter just reminded me that they offered to have a weekly meeting with us, to start the process of transitioning over, because there is an enormous amount of work here, They have still to this day, I believe it was 10 security guards on staff who cover the campus 24/7. And these are not just people who they're sitting in an office. They're more like, if you think of the concept of a night watchman. They walk around building to building to building, check the doors, see if the lights are still on, nothing's leaking. And that, I think, is an important thing to carry on. And there is a woman, I think her name is Lori, I can't remember her last name, but the other guy is Jeff Knapp. So there are some people there that might be strategic to how the authority wants to go ahead and, whether we want to bring them on or contract with them in some way, shape, or form. That's all, something you guys should give some consideration.
One other thing is your point about security. I want to say this, and I will, but we have been criticized as a governmental agency that maybe we weren't the right people to take over this property. I think the fact that if we get some pilferage and burglars and stuff going on, it's not going to look well in the newspapers that I told you so. So I think security with the real estate is going to be very important going forward.
So I think what we're going to start at the staff level is this meeting with them every week, because there is some other equipment there that you may want us to acquire on your behalf. And what I'm talking things like snow plows, landscaping equipment, lawnmowers, things like that. There still is a concert level baby grand piano in the Mastery Performing Arts Center that has not been sold. That's something you may want to think about, acquiring, because somebody'd only have to get another one anyway. If any of you have been there, it's the one that's right up on stage. But we'll catalog all of these things and bring it back to the board and make some decisions about what you would suggest we do on the staff side.
John, just so you know, some of those people that currently work for St. Rose are staying on through June, so that the authority doesn't have to pay for them. Even after closing, St. Rose like to stay there, obviously maintain the office because they have to go through their process of winding down.
Were they paid through the dip lender?
I don't know who's paying them, so, but they're getting paid.
It has to,
Yeah.
because that's the only source of cash they have.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that you and Dawn will,
Sure.
and that we're working on it. And Danielle.
Yeah, Danielle, do you want to?
Yeah, so thank you, Kevin, for putting me on the agenda. First, I just, on behalf of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association and, myself personally, thank you all for all the energy you put into this. It's been a really great opportunity to know all of you. And, coming into this, the community was nervous that we may have gotten a board full of people who really didn't appreciate our neighborhood, but I know that, and I've said this to many community groups that I've spoken to over the past couple of months, that you all have a connection to the neighborhood and really care, and it's just been a very positive experience so far, so thank you so much for that. We, as you know, are a very engaged neighborhood and very active. When this whole process started, council members Jimmy Farrell and Usunane had a town hall once there was an announcement for community members to come out and kind of express themselves, what they wanted to see happen, and share their concerns pretty much. So with that, of course, this is kind of the next phase of the process, and they had been talking about doing another town hall so that the community can come out and share their interests in the future of the neighborhood, and just kind of get more information from us also. So I had contacted Kevin to see if we could hold another town hall. I worked with Ginny and Wusu, and they're on board for having the association involved as well. So we have monthly meetings. So our next one is January 16th, and we'd like to invite you all to attend. It will be from 7 to 8:30, and I had requested Kevin to meet at the Lally School of Education hall where we've had meetings before. I know a lot of you have attended. And so that's our plan to kind of get public input on what is going on. Maybe we can get a better understanding of what the public is kind of thinking, and then also create different coalitions and get an understanding from, not only is it just our neighbors, it's also the Albany Police Department, it's also University of Albany, they're very involved in our neighborhood, and different organizations such as the Damien Center and different LaSalle, they all are very involved in the community as well. So just wanted to mention that. And so if I was wondering if if there's any questions or concerns on the meeting, I definitely want the board's support moving forward with these kind of community events, and also want you to be involved as much as you would like to.
What time are you going to be?
From 7 to 8:30,
What's the date?
January 16th. And all of our meetings, just for the year, are the third Thursday of every month. And typically they are at the Pine Hills Library or LaSalle School. I think hopefully moving forward, we can start to utilize some of the St. Rose buildings. That would be really wonderful to continue, engagement with the property. So they will be ongoing. So hopefully we can continue this engagement moving forward. We also have concerns, like Nick said, about wanting the community to be involved, but also keeping things going forward because we want our neighborhood to be active again. So that's definitely a priority. Community surveys, Allison, that's been a huge topic so far amongst our committees. So we definitely would be interested in seeing the most productive way to move forward with that. The association had been talking about creating our own, but if there's a better way to do that, definitely want to work with different stakeholders to kind of get that going too. So.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll get a calendar invite out to all the members. I don't know who will be able to be there, but certainly staff will be there, and we'll talk in advance of that. I don't know if there'll be much, to really talk about since we won't have closed on the property yet. But we can talk about the process. What gets us from here to closing and so on.
Yeah, that would be helpful, and it's really a way for the community to engage with us.
I think listening goes a long way too, in beginning the process,
Yeah.
and just hearing what they can put faces to names. And
Okay, any more for Danielle? At this point, okay. Tom?
Yes, sir. We have one more resolution before you. There's been a number of attorneys hired. This is one more. We'll start to see attorneys roll out now as their services are not needed at the same level that they were during the initial phase of the process. Peter is an example of a single out, but bankruptcy was very arduous and intense for a period of time. That will become much less so. So what you have before now, this is a large real estate closing. We have 91 tax parcels if I take out the president's house.
92.
Does that include the president's house or no?
We said
So 91.
in excess of 90.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think in 91, there's 74 structures, some are situated on multiple tax parcels. The zonings, there's gonna be a lot of things to work through from a real estate perspective. The closing is one of those. So this allows the CEO to enter into a retainer agreement with Goldman attorneys. You may know Paul Goldman, who's been done a number of real estate. In fact, he's represented parties that have procured pieces on the periphery of the St. Rose campus in recent time. So he's pretty familiar with at least the neighborhood zoning issues. And so that is the resolution that's before you now. So if we could have a first and a second.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Paul does a lot of work for me. Do I have a conflict of interest?
Thank you for disclosing that. maybe we could talk later, John, and I could give you a little more counsel, but unless it's something that specifically relates to Pine Hills, no. I mean, if you're gonna be involved as a potential purchaser or developer, obviously that would be a direct conflict. But the fact that he represents you in other areas unrelated to St. Rose should not be a conflict that would prevent you.
Let's just put that in the
from
record,
participating.
okay?
Yes, sir, and it is now,
Thank you.
yes. So, okay.
I guess the first step would be to move resolution, that's 2024-12-02.
Yes, sir. So first,
Okay, I would ask someone to move that resolution.
Okay. Second? Okay, Jasmine, second. All in favor?
Well, we want discussion,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
discussion. Any discussion on this?
Does this include, like for the title and services and all other things?
We will procure title insurance as part of this real
Oh, okay,
estate
but this
closing.
is just for the attorney for his
Yes.
closing costs. Okay.
Now, you did authorize the acquisition already pursuant to the purchase and sale. Purchase and sale agreement does allow us to procure title insurance. We will be using Steeringer
Oh,
as a title
yeah.
agent
Okay.
for this process. He has been through the, I believe he did the DIP lending work already. 70-some parcels, he's already gone down this road with
Okay.
title. So he would be the title agent that we would be using, which would be part of the closing expenses when we get to that point.
Okay.
After Joe does his good work and we get a bond closing, we're putting money in our wallet.
Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Hearing none, passed.
I have nothing, maybe if there's a member of the public here, anything you'd like to say? If you
I
introduce yourself.
usually try to stay quiet, Kevin, because I'll say many, many things, but I will not this time because I want to actually recognize something good that happened on the part of the community. And I told this to Danielle the eve of the bid. What I told her is that there is no better person for this particular deal to have in your corner than Kevin O'Connor and the people who come along with him. I've watched your work for a lot of years. You've supported some things that I've done in the past. We've not always agreed on things. We've been respectful when we didn't. I want to tell you what a fabulous job you did. You got property for the right price and pulled all these things together.
I have to, I'm just a mouthpiece, the county executive, as Harold mentioned, and this board, you really kind of deserve a lot of the credit, but thank you for those.
But they all have the wisdom of working with you, and you have that book. I know you didn't call on me to get a compliment. You probably
They're gonna think I paid you the money.
But you did a great job, all of you.
And for the record, the gentleman,
I'm John Wallner.
John, thank you. I just want to make sure it's on the record. Seeing any other comments for the good of the order before we adjourn?
I just want to say on behalf of County Executive McCoy, I'm really proud to be here. This has been a fast process and a great process. And, the county executive had this wild, crazy idea of the county coming and taking it over. And I just kind of looked at him and said, okay, how does that look like? And there's a lot of moving parts. A credit to a lot of people in the room, and thank you, Harold, for saying that, hey, this was county executive's thing, but, Harold did a ton of work in the beginning, working with bondholders, working on the language of this legislation. There's a ton of work now that this board is gonna have to do, and working with the county and Kevin and the Alliance, but thank you to all of you, and for coming here 2 days before Christmas and working through these holidays. But Harold, really, you got this ball rolling here with the county executive, and it was, I think that call to say, okay, what do we do now? And right before the sale, right before, we put the bid in, and then there was the auction date, and in that morning, it was about noon, I think. We had a conversation at noon on the date of the auction. And, you know, county executive was getting up and he was going in the next meeting, he's like, it's all done, right? Meaning, you know, we're committed, this is great, it's 35 million, but it's not gonna work. So at noon on that day, we just thought it was over. It was a great job by everybody, it was over. And then all of a sudden at, 4:20 or something like that, 4:30, got the call like, hey, by the way, successful bidder. So, okay, very emotional day in times, but there's a lot of work to be done. But I will tell you, there's so much opportunity here. There really is so much opportunity for each one of the board members and for our community as a whole. I live on South Main. Obviously, county executive lives in the city of Albany as well, and this is important. It's important for everybody. And, there'll be some pushback from other members outside of the city of Albany, other legislators. So we just need to make sure that we do our due diligence, do the right thing, and stay committed. But thank you to all of you, to Kevin O'Connor, who's been working hard, Nick, and the whole board. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if we could go into executive session just to discuss some of the interests in the campus, I'd rather not do that in public session, so.
So this would be to discuss the potential disposition of real estate for publicity and such would substantially affect its value thereof. And as an aside,
Thank you very much
also
for the
allow
kind
the board
words.
an opportunity to
Thank you.
see
Thank you for the kind
community
words.
I know what you guys are listening
Everybody,
We're gonna do our
everybody has
best.
to say, can I get
I lost my job in the company.
Oh, yeah. We got there,
Allison,
yeah.
second, Sarah.
I'll be here to help for
All
something.
those
Thank
in
you.
favor, say aye. All right, we're through the executive session.
Nothing more than that.
No, we're all set, John, thank you.